Morning. This is just a video response for a change in reaction to some stuff about avoiding crashes and avoiding post-exertional malaise, which I'll call PEM for the rest of this. Hopefully it won't take too long. And I was videoed summer 2021 on another YouTube channel, which I will share the link of when I tweet this, which says everything I need to say about pacing and resting, in my opinion. And what I really want to discuss today is the fact that I think it's really important to avoid crashes and post-exertional malaise, PEM, if you can. And I absolutely understand that some people will crash anyway. And from my point of view, 25 and a half years ago when I got ME/CFS following a virus, I crashed without fail for 2.5 years. It didn't matter what I did or how much I rested. I was crashing every week. 2 weeks maximum for 2.5 years. So I do appreciate it's completely impossible for many cases to avoid crashing. But I guess there's a lot of people new to post-viral illness, especially after COVID. So we have some long COVID people, and a lot of my contacts now are actually long COVID people. And sorry, the cat's arrived. Now, I'm seeing quite a lot of people saying, "Oh, I can still do a bit of work. I can still do a little bit of exercise. I can't do a lot of stuff, but I can do some stuff." And this is going to turn into a cat video, sorry. And that's totally understandable. And I've been the same in my recent years, because 18 months ago I had a crash caused by another virus. It wasn't caused by my activity, it was caused by a virus. And I worked out what I felt I could still do, and I carried on still doing it. And hey presto, I'm still not where I want to be. So I think that the thing that people need to do is avoid symptoms at all costs. Now, personally, my worst symptom is brain fog. I find it utterly intolerable, and therefore I will do anything I can to avoid it. And this means not doing anything that will trigger brain fog. So, for example, last year I did a 5k walk when I was starting to feel a lot better, and I kind of knew I was going to be okay. And I did the walk and tweeted it and said I've just done the first 5k continuous walk for 4 months. And a really nice guy came back with long COVID. He said, "Oh, brilliant, me too, I did one yesterday." He said, "I'm really suffering today, but man, it was worth it." I was like, no, don't suffer today. Don't do the 5k walk. Don't see it as an achievement and then have bad days. Because what happens when you have a crash after doing something, even if that something makes you feel good, is you're going backwards. You're going back from where you were when you started that activity, when you were feeling fairly well. And then your body has to recover back to where it was. Now that takes energy, it takes time, which you're already chronic, so there's more time gone. And I believe, in my experience, that if you crash regularly, the crashes can make you weaker, so that the next time you go for your 5k walk, whatever, you're actually going to be even worse. And this has happened to me this year as well. So I've stopped doing them. Go away. Sorry about the cat. Unless you like cats. It's not even my cat. I just like to bust the Twitter myth that I'm a cat man. I am a cat man, but I don't own any cats. It's my housemate. So back to this issue with avoiding crashes. So I gather Emily in America tweeted something about Ron Davis, who'd had a woman working with him who had developed ME/CFS, and she avoided all PEM, and she got completely better. Now, this has also been my experience with my own post-viral fatigue syndromes. And the British politician Yvette Cooper, there's an article in 1996, she had CFS quite badly for a year, and then she was 3 years to full recovery. And she said in her article that she just had to lie around and watch crap daytime TV. In the 90s, all you had was daytime TV and newspapers and magazines. Her dad also had it. I mean, I believe there's a strong genetic and hereditary component. Her dad had it for a year as well, and then he was just better and got on with his life. So it kind of says to me that the thing to do, and it's a shame, I retweeted Emily's tweet about how she just went from 15-mile runs to 12k runs to 5k runs and it wasn't working. She was still feeling ill and having symptoms. And I think that the critical thing to do is to try and eliminate all symptoms as best you can. Now, I totally get that most people who are moderate severe and very severe, that's going to be impossible. I think it's only possible for lucky people like me who are mild. I'd currently say I'm very mild, because I can actually avoid crashes. So a year and a bit ago, I did. I was working at I was working remotely 4 days a week for Decode ME, the genetic project in Edinburgh, and I did a triggering run, which was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. It was only 22 minutes. It cost me 7 months, and it cost me my job. And for the whole of January last year, I had brain fog every day, and for the whole of February, apart from one day, it was the same. And I also had tachycardia and POTS. I could not get rid of these symptoms. I could not wrest them away. I was off work sick for 3 weeks. 3 weeks as a result of driving to the supermarket, pushing a trolley around for 10 minutes and driving back. 3 weeks off work. So this was an extreme exertion intolerance. And the reason I'm bringing up this example is because I want to tell you what happened later in the year. So I rested. I asked Decode if I could just leave. They were being very good. I'd just like to say they were really understanding of my situation. And they said, we want to bring you back in a phased return to work. This doesn't work when you're going down with a crash. It can only work many months later when you're coming back out of it. So I asked them, look, can you just let me go? I'm really sorry. I can't be held to a return to work protocol because I am so unwell. So they let me go, and I then adopted an attitude of extreme rest until I'm better. And I'll be honest with you, it was months. And I looked at the railway line out the window there, and I imagined putting my head on the track because it's that bad. And those of you who follow me and have long COVID and ME know what I mean. And I decided I was going to rest like a bastard, sorry for the word, for up to 18 months. And that was my shot at getting better. And then I would probably go and jump off a cliff because I can't live like this. I went through this 25 years ago. I'm not doing it again. I was very lucky. It was only 2 or 3 months. And in that time, I used food deliveries. I managed 2 properties and they were too stressful. So I removed all that stress by appointing agents, for a commission, to do it all for me. So I had no stress. I have a housemate and I used, obviously you can shop online now. So I didn't do anything. And it took a long time, but eventually I started to stabilise. And by the end of April last year, I was starting to have more good days than bad. And by May, I found that my tolerance to exertion had gone up, and I could actually go to the local shop. And I started walking. It started off literally with a 2-minute walk, and what I have to say is no symptoms was an acceptable response. So if I did a 5-minute walk and I then had brain fog the next day, that's it. No more 5-minute walks until I've had no symptoms for a few weeks again. And it's a very boring, slow process. And I did make a couple of mistakes. But I noticed that when I did, instead of having 2 months of solid brain fog, I had maybe a day and a half, 2 days. So, and then an astonishing thing happened. I went to a funeral in Bristol in June, and I was very scared about this trip. And I went there and I told everyone I was very weak, and I paced, I rested, and it was a success. It's very sad saying goodbye to my friend, but it was a success. I had no crashes. And then by the summer, I started easy rock climbing again. And initially this meant climbing up one boulder problem, coming down and sitting on the ground because of POTS. And this slowly built up. And you don't know all the details, but let's just say that in October, November, I was in Greece on a 2-week rock climbing holiday in the sun with my Bristol crew. And we climbed every other day, and we drank every night, and I regularly walked with a heavy rucksack up to the crags. I climbed my hardest route since 2017, and I had one slightly pooey day, and I actually climbed on that day. I didn't do much, but I did actually climb on that day. And I did think that day I was worried. I was thinking, oh God, here we go. But the next day I was fine, and then I was fine, and I got home and I was fine. So that example is my experience as a sufferer of post-viral fatigue syndrome. I don't have long COVID. I've never had COVID. And I do not currently meet the criteria for ME/CFS. So I have post-viral fatigue syndrome. I would say I'm a mild CFS sufferer right now. But I do have a trigger where I can trigger post-exertional malaise. But in my case, extreme resting and avoiding PEM, avoiding symptoms, not at all costs, but as much as possible, say 90% of the time, really working to avoid symptoms, worked for me. So I went from being almost bedridden in January, February last year to rock climbing in Kalymnos to my highest level for 5 years in October, November. Now, I think that's quite unbelievable. I still can't quite believe it. And I'm not in that state yet now, but I'm doing everything I can to be in that state. So I believe that people who say, oh, I don't mind a bit of PEM, it's worth it, I believe you're delaying your potential recovery. I can't back that up with science. You could say I'm an N equals 1 anecdote. You could say that I don't have ME. I'd agree with you. I'd like to fully state that people with long COVID often have much more complicated pictures due to their vascular issues. And I'm so sorry for you. It must be so hard with all these additional problems and symptoms through long COVID, which do seem to be possibly more complex than ME. But in my experience, purely on a fatigue, PEM and brain fog point of view, it seems to me that it's okay to rest. Somebody touched on deconditioning. So I didn't decondition so badly last year that I couldn't walk up a hill or walk up and down steps or lift a bag. I did spend, at my worst, all morning in bed and after lunch all afternoon on the sofa. And I did that for about 6 weeks. Like every day I would have this resting protocol. It's kind of easy with these cats on your lap because they kind of keep you peaceful. And I didn't have any, I don't have children, I don't have a job, I don't have any, no obligations. So it was easy for me with my destroyed life to do that. But I didn't decondition, and it wasn't forever, because by 8 months, 9 months later, I was then able to travel to Greece and, lift rucksacks, go rock climbing, drink beers, everything again, which would have been completely impossible in January, February last year. In February last year, I cancelled a trip to Portugal. I couldn't even got to the airport. I actually booked assistance at the airport because of my POTS. So I'd have been pushed around in a wheelchair. But then I realised it wasn't really, it was hopeless. I would get out of Portugal and I'd have to stand in a line at the passport control, so I cancelled that holiday. And yet, by October, I was going to Greece. And it's going to happen again this year, I hope. Okay, hopefully that's useful. It's 13 minutes, that's probably quite long enough of me and my head. Have another cat. Go on, say hello, Maggie. This is Maggie. Right, I'll tweet this and then any comments, let me know. Cheers.